So we've been sailing for around a year now, and we thought it's about time we started answering more of your questions. So we've got a whole bunch of questions from our patrons over on Team Nova, and we've also got a whole heap of questions from our very first Q&A when we first set off from Vancouver. So we're going to answer a whole lot of those today for you. We're in Australia, and we hope you can see some beautiful areas where we are, and yeah, it's a really beautiful warm day, 33 degrees, very beginning of spring, and it's going to be great. So, first one is from one of our patrons. She said, "Hello, I've been wondering if you have a procedure in place if criminals attempt to board your boat, if you're on the boat or off it. I worry about Coco if you're not on the boat and someone tries to enter. Do you keep her locked up inside?" Okay, so the answer is lots of different things. So when we're out on the open ocean, we try to stay away from other boats as much as we can. When we were coming down past Central America, we did have a run-in with what we thought maybe was a pirate boat, but really just a fisherman boat that was kind of opportunistically taking the chance to come near us and maybe try and steal something. That's what we think. So what we learned from that was to stay away from other boats as much as possible. If you see them either on AIS or radar or just visually, just steer clear. If they make moves towards you, just go further away. That's the first thing. Second, get some binoculars out and have a look at them. Do they look like they're coming at you? Do they have weapons, particularly guns? Because that kind of changes things up a lot, especially if they end up catching you. Get ready to go as fast as you can, turn both motors on, sail at the fastest point of sail if there's wind, and just get away from them as much as you can. Third, get some weapons ready. We've got spear guns, fire extinguishers, wasp spray, anything like that. Chuck some lines in the water when they're near you to try and foul their prop. Basically try and stop them coming on board. That's if you're on the boat. If we're not on the boat and we're at anchor and we're leaving, well, yeah, we lock the boat up pretty much all the time. Now that we're going to have really good aircon, we're going to be able to put Coco inside and lock it, and she'll be perfectly comfortable. And we do think that if anyone that wasn't us came on board, she would just run and hide, and I don't think they would ever see her or know of her existence. So that makes us feel better. We also don't leave the boat for very long at a time, or at least since we've had Coco, we haven't left the boat for very long at a time. We also make friends with all the boats around us, so they often know if we're going to be away for a bigger proportion of the day, and so they will keep a bit of an eye on the boat for us. And that happened quite a few times in Mexico. Other boats were on the radio saying if there was anyone a little bit dodgy hanging around, and one time they actually saw them stealing a paddleboard off someone's boat and were able to go and stop that from happening. So there's lots of different ways, but hopefully that answered your question for now. Now let's have a bit of a walk and we'll answer the next question.
Look at this. This is gorgeous. Woo!
So this is Funjalung National Park. It's a really, really awesome spot where the rainforest comes down right to the beach, and it's just beach for miles and miles and miles, and so beautiful.
All right, here's another question from Patreon, and we'll get to questions that aren't from Patreon as well. Hi, I would like to know how long your trip from Vancouver to Alaska was, at what time of year you did it. Please also tell us more about the decisions to leave Vancouver and head down to Mexico regarding time of year and weather. So our trip to Alaska, what ended up being around 2 months. We left July 26th from Vancouver, which was way late in the year to leave to go up to Alaska, but we just weren't getting the refit done as fast as we wanted, and it was either leave then or don't leave at all, and so we decided to leave. We knew that we were late in the season. We kind of boogied real fast up to Alaska, and then we weren't planning on staying for as long as we stayed. When we started coming back, it was already kind of the start of the storm season up there in late September. So we came back and came to Vancouver. We broke a bunch of stuff, and so we decided, and all of our sailing decisions are made in concert with each other. So because we're both so new, we make sure to just, like, we both understand the risks as much as we can, and then we both make a decision. If one of us says absolutely not, then we don't do it. So we came back, and by the time we were ready to leave again to go to Mexico, it was October 20th. And that trip was fairly quick. It only took us 8 days to get down to San Diego. So we got there around October 28th from leaving Vancouver. And the reason we left was because it gets a bit cold and it's not as fun to sail around. And Yvette is from Australia, very much doesn't like the cold, drizzly weather. And I wanted some warmth in my life as well. So that's why we decided to go to Mexico. We just barely caught, well, we caught the last weather window of the season to get down there. Usually you're supposed to have left by September 15th, and there's correct seasons to leave and coming back's a bit harder, but we wanted warmth, and that's why we went down there. And we thought we were going to have to skip down and go really, really slowly from Vancouver and take 3 months to get down and follow weather windows. Just fortunate we got the best weather window of the year, and it happened to be after the season for going to Mexico was the season. So that's why.
Yeah, that's why. So the next question is about Supernova. Please tell us more about the boat. Why was there no shower built inside? So as you know, we don't have a shower inside. We have since put a little shower outside the boat, which we love now that we're in warm weather. But the reason there's no shower inside is because I don't think the previous owner really took the boat to places where he was having showers very often. It was more of a cruising, close to home kind of boat. And so they didn't really mind. There were shower heads in the heads, but the actual shower compartments, the heads, they weren't shower proof. They weren't waterproofed. So the walls would all get wet, water would go behind them because they weren't just covered in the right materials. And so they just didn't work anymore either by the time we got the boat. So we're thinking what we're going to do is, because there's 4 heads with toilets, and we really don't need that many, we're going to take one out completely and then waterproof the room and turn it into just a shower compartment. And then we can use it when we need to have a shower inside, which at the moment isn't very often, but if we go somewhere cold again, then that will be lovely. Or if we're somewhere really crowded or something like that. I don't know. At the moment, we've gotten so used to not having showers inside. It's pretty good.
The next question is about insurance. And we've gotten about 100 of these questions. That's exaggerating, like 5 or 10. And different people are wondering how we have insurance, if we have insurance. The short answer is we have insurance. It covers almost nothing. So we have basic liability insurance, and it covers us for going into a marina, or if we hit somebody, then they're covered. But we're not covered. So we can't get our boat fixed if we hit someone. If our boat sinks at sea because of a big wave, we get hit by lightning, any of that, we're not covered. We lose the boat, we lose everything. And it's just how it is. The boat is very old and pretty much nobody's willing to give it full insurance or hull insurance. And we have to know, and we have to make our decisions based on the fact that we're pretty much not insured, except for covering other people around us. So it kind of sucks, but it is what it is, and we make hopefully safer decisions because of it.
So these are paper daisies. They're completely fresh flowers, but they feel exactly like paper. Super, super dry, just like Australia. We're right on the beach and they're everywhere. But yeah, they're the oddest flowers. I really like them. Anyway, our next question is about why we drive the dinghy on the port side. The first answer is I didn't know that there was a right side to drive the dinghy, and I certainly didn't know it was supposed to be on the other side, although now that we've heard this question, we see everyone sitting on the other side. The second answer is that's how Darcy taught me, and I had no idea. And the third answer is I actually quite like it because you use your right arm and then you feel like you're actually in control.
In my defense, nobody taught me how to drive a dinghy. All I did was go, it's easier to drive it with the right hand. And the dinghy motor we have, the handle, the throttle is in the center of the motor. So you can really be on either side, and it's just a lot better with your right hands. I have no other reasoning than that.
But now we're so used to driving it with our right hand that we don't know how to do it with our left hand, and it just feels really weird and uncomfortable. So we're stuck with it this way.
These are dead cuttlefish. It's like the bone or the harder structure. I don't think they have any bones, but they're all over the beach here. Anyway, this question kind of leads into the last question that I answered about insurance, and it's sailing experience. We've had this question a bunch of different times, a bunch of different ways, do we really have no sailing experience? So we were told by insurance if we got our ASA sailing certifications that they would give us insurance. So we did. We went, and in 1 week we got the ASA sailing certifications we needed, but we didn't do a whole lot before that. We did the book work, and it was a bad decision because basically we had our noses in a book. We were smart in theory, but we hadn't really done a whole lot in practice. And after that, we decided that, you know, when we got rejected from insurance anyway, we decided that we were just going to focus on gaining as much sailing experience as we could on our boat. So we technically do have our ASA courses, but we don't have anywhere near enough sailing experience. And that's why we pick our weather windows very carefully. We talk to a ton of people, including you guys. If you guys have ever talked to us in the comments, you know that we answer all your comments and we appreciate the help in the comments, but we get as much information as possible before we do what we're gonna do. And are we gonna sail around the world? Yes. Are we good enough to sail around the world right now? No. But we hope that we're good enough to make our next anchorage spot and our next anchorage spot, and we're trying to gain as much knowledge as we can on the way, and we felt that that was the best way for us. We would recommend learning on your own boat rather than someone else's, because that's really the only way we've learned. And if you have a base knowledge from theory, as long as the weather's good, you can kind of figure it out. But it really, really helps to have experienced sailors on your boat teaching you. At some point, it would be nice if we could do that, but right now it's just us. We didn't have experience coming into this, and that's why we make as many mistakes as we do. I know it's frustrating. Sometimes you sit at the TV screen or the computer screen and you're shaking it and you're going, why are you doing that? It's literally because we don't know any better, and we just get together, talk about it, and figure out the best way. If it doesn't work, we figure out a different way. So that's it.
You have some admirers. Hello.
So the next question is, what has been our biggest highs and our lowest lows? So we're both going to answer this one. I'll go first and then we'll share Darcy's answers. So for me, my absolute highest high of the trip so far, where I've just felt so really happy, was when we stepped foot on Catalina Island. That's near San Diego, and it was the first place we stopped after we left Vancouver and sailed for 8 days down the west coast of the USA. And it was our first big trip. It was the first time we were properly leaving Vancouver and not planning on coming back like we had with Alaska. And it was really the first kind of trip of the big round the world trip. So it was just such a big, really good feeling that we were actually going to do this, and we'd left home and we were making this happen. And it was just the best feeling in the world. We went there, we got a beer, we walked around, and it just felt like we were on top of the world. It was such a good feeling. In contrast, I'd say the lowest low was a little bit before that. In July, leading up to when we were hoping to go to Alaska, we were not ready. We had so many things still to do on the boat. Everything just took so much longer than planned. We'd both really wanted to go to Alaska, and we'd been thinking about it, talking about it, and planning it for the last couple of years ever since we got the boat. It was going to be our shakedown sail before we left Vancouver for good and headed south. And we really wanted to make it happen, but the closer we got into summer, through summer, getting towards like running out of time completely, we were thinking maybe it wasn't going to happen. And literally the night before we left, we sat down. This was like 25th I think of July, and we had to decide whether we were actually going to go or not. We had a lot of stuff that wasn't ready, but we just, yeah, we were feeling pretty low. We were a bit down. We had so much still to do, and that's probably the lowest I've felt in the whole scheme of everything since we bought Supernova and all the time since, because it was kind of feeling like nothing was going to plan and nothing was going to actually work out like we had hoped. But the next day we turned it around. We just got everything we possibly thought we might need and put it on the boat, and we just left the dock. And we didn't make it very far, just a few miles, but we anchored and we were off. We were gonna start heading towards Alaska, and yeah, we turned that around. But that night before we left was probably the lowest I felt.
Because we were honestly saying we might not go, and that's what we were gonna have a serious talk about.
Yeah, and it was the potential decision that would kind of lead to the whole trip kind of not happening at that point, or taking another year of fixing up the boat, because we wanted to have that shakedown and come back to Vancouver before we left for good. So yeah, that's my answers. Now let's see what Darcy has to say for himself.
We found this sweet custom catamaran here, and it's a perfect spot for me to answer my highs and lows. I'm gonna start with my lows. Mexico, man, a lot of Mexico, we were having engine problems, and they turned out to be really, really simple fixes, all of them. And I really should have known better. Most of you probably were like screaming at the screen, telling me that it was an easy fix. But there was a lot of times there in Mexico when we were running off of one engine and it wasn't even doing that well. But you know, I learned a lot and managed to fix everything. Had a lot of help from a lot of different people. But that was probably the lowest, because I was kind of thinking, like, if we can't figure out this engine stuff, we can't afford new engines, and so like we'll have to just stop until we can learn how to rebuild the engines. But luckily enough, it was all easy fixes. We learned tons about the engines during that time, but I have to say every time an engine went down would be like the lowest kind of, I would just get a little bit lower and a little bit lower, because we'd fix something and then the other engine would go down. So a bunch of different points in Mexico were like kind of the lows. Just because the engines were really not reliable at all. But as you guys know, we got everything fixed up. It was all relatively easy fixes, no engine damage, and off to the races. My highest high is a bit of a weird one, because it's also when we lost the engines. It was in Alaska when we lost both engines, and it sounds like a weird like high, like best part of the trip, but we want to sail around the world. That's what we want to do. And if we had lost both engines and, you know, called a mayday, we were 500 meters away from the rock. I don't know, it's like just over a quarter of a mile away from the rocks, and had no sails out, lost both engines, and it should be a terrible time. And at the time, it wasn't great. But we stepped on it, got the sails out, got control of the boat, in really, really high winds, the highest winds we've still ever sailed in to this day by a long shot. And we're able to fix the fuel issue that we had enough to get to the safe moorage that we got to. And then we made the decision, because the wind was only going to be good tomorrow, like the next day, to go and to just, you know, to go out into high winds again and falling over, and make sure that we could get back to the dock without needing help. And the reason it was the highest high was because when we got back to the dock in Petersburg, not only did we figure out our engine problem, we figured out a temporary fix so we didn't need to call for help. And then both of us felt like we can do this. Like, we can figure out these problems working together, and we can be world cruisers now because of this. If we would have just called for help, and, you know, then we would have really been second guessing if we were ready to start our big trip and to go off to Mexico and to go in the open ocean. So my highest high was when we lost both of our engines in a storm, but managed to figure it out. We got through it and made it happen.
So the next question was someone asking if we could please do a tour of the boat, because they've only seen a small part of the inside. And that's true.
Very true. The boat is in terrible shape because of our kind of tools everywhere, mess everywhere, spare parts everywhere. We were hoping to do a boat tour a lot sooner than this, but we will get there shortly, hopefully. We just have a couple more projects that we need to get done, and then we're going to do a big boat tour.
Yeah, so we've been saying this for, well, a year now, really, because a lot of people have really wanted to see it, but we promise this time we will get to it. We've just got these last few things we want to do, and then we'll show you absolutely everything inside. So in case you're wondering, this is the rainforest that goes right up to the beach. It's pretty rare around the world to have rainforest going right up to the water, and it's so beautiful. I love it here. It's the north coast of New South Wales, and there's lots of different types of birds and lots of different types of animals that you can see as well, but just beautiful rainforest, and then you can go for a swim in the beach afterwards.
And for everyone who's not Australian, not everything tries to kill you, just most things.
No, it's very safe. You should all come and visit.
49.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the baby girl.
Thank you.
What is that?
chips and potato scallops.
Chips from fish and chips.
Yeah, fish and chips. We got some the other night and Darcy had no idea what chicken salt was when they asked him if he wanted chicken salt. So that's what we've got on today's. It's a delicacy of Australia. Other countries, Canada has poutine, their type of chips. Germany probably has mayonnaise, I don't know.
Why does Germany have mayonnaise?
I don't know. Holland has mayonnaise and olive sauce and pinda sauce and I don't know, Japan, I don't know. Anyway, we've got chicken salt, which it's not from chicken. I think it was originally made to add to chicken. It has like spices like paprika, garlic, onion, all into like a spice that's put all over it with salt.
And
it's
we're
delicious.
gonna eat it.
And then we've got some potato scallops, which I know is a contentious subject in Australia because other states call them, I think, potato cakes, but they're definitely potato scallops. So let's go and enjoy.
The birds are very chirpy here. The next question is about modifications, because we've done a lot of work to the boat. So what is our favorite modifications that we've done to the boat? Now we thought there's a couple different ways to answer this. And there's like the boring way. And the boring way is going to be, the favorite modifications are going to be the hardtop, the dinghy davits, and the autopilot. Because the boat didn't have autopilot before we put it in. And those are the boring ones, but the trip is like not possible without the autopilot. We spent so much time in the cockpit and we get so much sun cover from the hard top. And the dinghy davits, speak for themselves. We can raise our dinghy from like showing up at the back of the boat to lifting the dinghy in less than a minute. So we really like those modifications, but we figured that we would go to like the funner modifications, the things that we like a little better. Anyway, so for me, it's going to be the electric cooking. It's something that I saw on a lot of new catamarans that had electric cooking, electric galleys, and I really, really, really wanted that. So it was a little bit of a stretch to put it in, took a little bit of time, but we got it going, we got it working, and we're still on the same propane bottle that we were using up in Alaska, and we only use it for barbecues, and we even have an electric barbecue that we use most of the time anyway. So when we're like going to shore and stuff like that, we use the gas bottle. But the electric cooking has been phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Everybody that can get it should get it. It's just you never have to worry about getting propane or if your propane's running out or switching bottles. So that's my favorite thing. And Yvette will tell you all about how she likes the new solar shade that we just built.
I'm gonna have some of these chips first, I think. Try this chicken salt. It reminds me of growing up so much because I always got it. My favorite thing, well, one would be, even though it's super recent, is the shade over the trampoline. I know we've only enjoyed it kind of pretty much for one day, but it was brilliant, and I can lie outside where it's nice and cool over the water, on the trampolines, covered from the sun, and just read a book. I think that's my favorite modification so far. My favorite fun one.
My favorite modification is chicken salt to fries.
And potato scallops. Also a really good Australian food.
So this is a famous Australian bird called a plover, and he's just coming to hang out with us. He's super cute. I think the majority of people in Australia don't like these birds because they like swoop, but I think they've just been given a bad rap, and they're just adorable little plovers. It's Petey the plover. Look, you can get right up to him. Petey the plover doesn't even mind. Now somebody had a bad experience with a Petey the plover.
I've had many bad experiences. Every day walking home from school, I had my backpack on my head and ran past where they laid their eggs every single spring, and I got swooped every single day walking home from school during that time. So no, he's evil.
I think that I believe Petey the plover over Yvette, because look. Petey the plover is just sitting there, not doing anything, not harming anyone, not swooping anybody. Frankly, Yvette, that sounds a little made up to me. Yeah. So I have some big news, some gigantic news, some kangaroo news. There's a kangaroo.
Look at him or her doing kangaroo stuff.
Okay, so next question is again from one of our patrons. We have mixed it up a little bit. Hi, kangaroo.
The kangaroo is just over there. It's not that far away. It just had to do its kangaroo hop.
Get some more grass. So the question is, probably the only time I've ever seen either of you without a smile was when that strange fishing boat turned towards you and followed Supernova for a while on one of your passages. Was that frightening, concerning, or something else? So it was both. It was frightening and concerning. I think the main thing was that at the time it all happened quite quickly once I realized that it wasn't just simply a fishing boat, but that something a little bit dodgy was happening and it was turning towards us. And so then it happened quite quickly, woke Darcy up, and we kind of ran through our emergency type procedures that we had run through just talking about over weeks and months beforehand about what we'd do in such a circumstance, which was put the engines in forward as fast as they go, turn to get the wind in our fastest point of sail and try and get away from them. And that worked. For the first kind of 5 minutes, we weren't 100% sure if they were gaining on us. We were going pretty similar speeds, but then we quickly realized that we were getting away from them, so we'd be fine. And yeah, then we just felt, I think, relief, total relief. But it did make us a bit more wary about those sorts of circumstances in the future.
And the other emergency procedures we didn't need to go to them, but we have a lot of spear guns on board. We have wasp spray, like you said before. But we had to like kind of act, we had to move, and we had to make sure we were on our fastest point of sail. The other plan, if fastest point of sail isn't working, is the most uncomfortable point of sail for whichever boat is chasing us. But so once everything was done, it was obvious that they weren't going to catch us.
Yeah, I think I've learned from that seeing a light up ahead and then the light, the sun came up and I saw it was a fishing boat, I would get out further away from it earlier on. I think I just thought, oh, it's a fishing boat, it's just doing its fishing up there, that's also the way I want to go. So I got kind of quite close to it initially. I did start making turns, which is when I kind of realized it was making turns towards us. But even then I thought, oh, I'm probably just unfortunately getting in its way with the fishing. But it was when it turned and went straight for us. So I think in future, yeah, I would make a turn way earlier on and just get completely out of its way. And then you would know earlier if it's kind of coming for you.
Okay, no one's interested in pirates. Everyone's interested in more kangaroos. So we're gonna go try and find some more kangaroos. So we're just gonna walk around here and hopefully try and find some more kangaroos. They're right there.
Hey, you guys. Hey.
So the next question we're gonna answer is boat parts. How do we know which boat parts to get? Oh, they're so adorable when they hop. How do we know which boat parts to get, which spares to get, and which spares to travel with? And in all honesty, we don't. What we should have done is we should have looked at what could possibly stop us in our tracks, what could stop us from going any further, and then how could that thing break? So we should have had more engine spares on board, but we didn't. We had some, and we should have had less piping spares on board. But these kangaroos are awesome. Okay, they're all gonna hop away. Oh, that one has a little Joey in its pouch.
Yeah, it does. Oh, super cute.
So we should have done a better job with spares. We're gathering spares kind of as we go. Whenever we get to a place where spares are affordable, we get a couple more. But if you're looking at what spares you should have, look at your engine and your sails and like your rigging system and the stuff that's really, really gonna screw you over. Spares for your water system, stuff like that. So what's gonna stop your trip, and then how can it break? We really should have more engine spares. We get away with having 2 engines, and we've had one engine not working for a long time. Then we'll fix it, then the other engine works. But that's kind of how we did our spares. We just kind of did our best guess, bought a ton of spares for as cheap as we could, and that was probably a mistake because we had some spares that were cheap and they just didn't work because they were cheap even though they were the right spares to have. We had a control cable for the throttle cable that was just too cheap of a cable and it just didn't work. It just too much friction in the throttle cable. When we replaced it with a good throttle cable, it worked perfectly. So don't cheap out on your spares, especially if they're your engine spares or any of your spares for your water system, toilet system, like black water system and stuff like that. So that's how we did spares. Not ideal. We should have put more effort into it for sure.
Yeah, and I think we're learning more and more about that sort of thing as we go. And we're just going to get better and better, more lists, more planning, better quality spares, more organized with it.
More skill on the crew.
Okay, let's just get one more shot of the kangaroos. There's so many around here.
Oh, man,
they're lovely.
Kangaroos are just one of the coolest things ever.
That kangaroo has a little Joey on it. On it? In it?
In it. In its pouch.
And it's just eating grass. And the Joey's eating grass.
Hopefully you could see that. We don't have our zoom camera here in Australia, but this one here has a little cute Joey in its pouch, and it's just adorable.
They're all adorable.
Yeah, they all are.
So our plans have recently changed. Instead of going to the next spot, we're just going to sit here and watch kangaroos for a little bit. But we'll see you at the next spot.
Okay. Well, I think it's about time to head to the beach and have a swim. We've been walking around all day and it's super hot. And yeah, time to get in the water.
But look at how cute they are. Do you want a boop? No, probably not. Probably no boops.
So we have a bunch more questions we need to get through. We're going to do one now, but we're going to get to the rest of them onto an extra long Patreon Q&A because this video I think is getting pretty long. So we're going to get to some more questions like what I'm doing here for work, how we've been able to pay and fund our trips so far, and a few different things like that on an extra long Patreon video.
Just interject really quick. The Q&A that we're putting up on Patreon is free for everybody. So if you go and join our Patreon as a free member, you'll get to see that video. And there's other huge bonuses for a Patreon that we're gonna hopefully be able to announce soon. We're still working on them. And we're gonna put out an extra video for the people that are on our Patreon as paid members, just to show how much we appreciate. So they're still gonna get their Patreon only video. So anyway, back to Yvette.
But for now, we're going to answer one more, and that one is where we're going to be sailing for the rest of this year and then into the next hurricane season. So, as you know, we're going to head across to the ABC Islands, then Grenada, St. Vincent area. Then we're going to spend the season in the Caribbean working our way north. And that's the time when hurricane season will be starting to come back again. And we could either head down to Grenada, Trinidad area and hide there. Or what we think we're going to do is go further north up into the USA and go up the coast, maybe into Canada, and really just see how far north we can get, because we loved those higher latitudes when we were over on the other side, northern BC and Alaska. So that's our plans going forward for the next year or so. Let us know what you think. If you have any more questions, put them down below. We'll get to them in the next Q&A video we get to. Otherwise, join us on Patreon and we'll answer a bunch more there. But for now, it's time to get in the water finally.